Hey, you're watching Cat Roll Hunter. Today we're going to be hunting Canadian pennies. How do I get Canadian pennies, you ask? Stay tuned, I'll tell you. Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel, Cat Roll Hunter. And today I got some pennies. I got a bunch of pennies from the bank and you can see they come in baggies. Each of these is $1. So we're going to do $10, the equivalent of 20 rolls today. And people regularly ask me, how do I get pennies? Well, as many of you know, the banks in Canada are supposed to take any pennies they get back from customers and send them back to the Royal Canadian Mint to be destroyed. So they're not really supposed to be selling them back. But the secret to getting pennies is just to ask and ask again. So at my main bank, when I started going in and asking for pennies, they didn't give me anything. I just asked enough times that they started giving it to me. Now, if they get pennies, they'll call me on the phone. So your bank may not be willing to sell you pennies. It really depends on the staff in the bank and I guess your relationship with them. So try to build a good relationship with your tellers. They'll probably say yes. So for me, this is all about finding some treasure, of course. In our last penny hunt, we got some King George V pennies. That was incredible. So I didn't want to wait too long to do pennies again. You never know what you're going to find. It would have been a real shame for those to be sent back to the mint and melted down. That would be just crazy. So we're going to see what we can find. You never know. People empty their piggy banks that have been sitting around for years. There could be some really old stuff. There could be some errors and varieties and new stuff in here too. But we got to get in here to find out. We are trying to fill some spots in our Lighthouse Vista Nature album. We'll have a look at the album at the end when we look through our finds to see if we can fill some holes or upgrade some. So let's dig in. We're going to start with baggie number 1 right here and see if there's anything good in here. So what I'm doing here is I'm going through the pennies. I just dumped out the bag here. I am separating out all of the zinc and steel Canadian cents from 1997 and later from the copper cents. Of course, I'm checking for any errors and varieties. The copper cents I'm going to throw in the copper cup. The zinc and steel cents I'm going to roll up and take back to another bank. So, of course, people always ask me too, what do you do with all the copper that you find? Well, conceivably, theoretically, I'm holding on to it, stacking it, if you will, and the price of copper is significantly greater, at least perhaps 3 times greater than the face value of the coins. So the pennies are worth more in their copper form than they are as a penny. There's really not a market right now for copper pennies. If the price of copper continues to rise, we might start to see that, and people might start trading copper pennies in rolls or boxes, just like they trade silver coins, right? Just for the silver content. So this is sort of a future investment. I'm just holding on to it for now rather than sending it back to the bank. I'm going to hold on to some theoretical profit here. But I got a couple of things in here that we can check. That's why I stopped. First of all, we've got a 2006. If we flip it over, it doesn't have the Royal Canadian Mint logo and it doesn't have the P composition mark. So what we want to do is check it to see if it's magnetic. There's a rare variety and I have found 2 of them with this 2006, no P, no mint mark, that is magnetic. And I've got my handy dandy little magnet here from Walker Magnet, another YouTuber, and this is not. This is just a common zinc non-magnetic coin. I'm going to throw that back. And the other one that we have to check, which I've lost track of, there we go, is the Centennial Commemorative with the rock dove on it. We're just going to check it for some doubling. So there are 2 spots you can check for doubling on this coin. First of all is the legend on the bottom here, Canada 1867, 1967. There's none on here, we can see that, but there can be pretty extensive die deterioration doubling all across that legend that looks really, really cool. So that's not it. We're going to flip it over and we're going to look on the back here where it says DG Regina, and there is a doubled die obverse, a rotated hub doubling that you could find. You'll see doubling of these letters. Particularly look at the G, you would see an extra serif to the right. Everything sort of spreads further across this way. We don't have that here too. You'll want to look for that. That's a really cool and rare variety as well. Wow, we're in that first bag still, and we've got our first US wheat penny, and it is an oldie. Check it out. That is a 1910. Got a little bit of damage on the rim. They don't come much older than that. We'll throw this under the scope, get a closer look. Have a look at that 1910. They really only come 1 year older than this. 1909 was the transition year. They made Indian head cents and they made the Lincoln wheat cent. It was the first year for the Lincoln wheat cent. So 1910, that's a crazy old coin. You can see it's pretty worn and a little bit of dinged up, but that's great. And I'm really happy to add that to my collection. A 1910 cent just in a baggie from somebody's piggy bank probably. That is just awesome. I do have a Lincoln cent here that was in this 2009. It's one of these Lincoln commemoratives. I think this might be the formative years. And I know that there is, well, a whole bunch of double dies on this one, particularly around the fingers in the book. I'll put it under the scope. I'm not familiar with all the different varieties, but we'll see if we can spot anything unusual, like an extra finger. So taking a close look at the fingers holding the book, I don't see anything strange or unusual, anything that looks like an extra digit. So I think this is just a regular one. And I think this one is in pretty circulated condition. It's just going back. Another one you need to check is your 1985s. This is the blunt 5, like pretty much a straight line at the top of the 5. There's a pointed 5, and that one is the one you want to look out for. I have found two, even in a circulated condition, those ones might be worth about 50 bucks. It's incredible. They're out there. After that first bag of 100 pennies, far more heavily weighted towards zinc and steel. We've got Canadian and some US than it is to copper with our Canadian and US. But at least one of the copper finds that we had is a real oldie, and it might end up being the find of the hunt, a 1910 wheat cent. So we're into baggie number 2. This would be rolls 3 and 4, and we're going to get our first laureate portrait find of the hunt, and it is, we'll flip it over, a 1962. And I've just thrown that under the scope because there are a couple of interesting varieties we can look for. The first one is the guitar or harp. There are some lines coming down from the 1 in 1 cent. We don't have that here. And the other one that you can find on pretty much all of the 50s and 60s is the hanging number, which is basically a line that looks like it's hanging from this maple leaf down to the top of that number. That's related to a die clash. It's actually an impression of the Queen's chin. It's this line here on the reverse of the coin when these two dies clashed, when there was no planchet in the chamber. These two dies hit one another, made an impression on it, which then is transferred onto subsequent coins. It was really, really common in the 50s and the 60s, but we don't have that one here either. Partway through baggie 3, this is rolls 5 and 6, and we're going to get another laureate portrait, our second, but this time from the 50s. That's a 1955. That is a very nice find. And this 1955 is the shoulder fold variety. There is a line on the shoulder. You can see it right there. We can also verify that because the font on here, the typeface is a little bit different. The I here doesn't have much of sort of a flared serif end. So this is the common shoulder fold. The uncommon no shoulder fold from 1955 is a very valuable coin, worth hundreds of dollars if you can get it in an MS-60. And just 2 coins later, we're going to get our oldest of the hunt, at least our oldest Canadian, that is. And that's going to be a King George VI. And if we flip it over, this is a 1947 maple leaf. So this was actually minted in 1948 after India had gained its independence. And the legend here still says, "and Emperor of India." They were waiting on the new dies from the Royal Mint in England to update the date, update the legend on here. They needed to just add this maple leaf to the existing die just to differentiate, to let them know that this was minted in 1948. They didn't want to mint a 1948 that still said, "and Emperor of India." Things might be heating up a little bit. We've got another laureate portrait. This one, we'll flip it over. It's going to be a 1964. Same bag, there's a 2012. That was the last year that the penny was minted in Canada. Another laureate portrait, this time it's a 1963. Just at the end of bag number 4, this would be roll number 8 or its equivalent. This one's another laureate portrait. This one, another 1963 for the board. We're into bag number 5. This would be roll number 10 here, the tail end of that. And there's another 1964 laureate portrait. Just a few coins back, I found this guy. I couldn't really make out what it was. I took a close look through it under the scope, and there is the shadow of King George VI. So we flip it over. It's pretty rough shape, but that's a 1943 right there. Just the second coin of baggie number 6. And that is another 1964 laureate portrait. Baggie number 6, this would be roll number 11, another laureate portrait. And we got some sunshine to help us out here. It's another 1962. I put it under the scope here, and this could be the 1962 hanging 2. I see a little bit of a mark here that could be that impression from the obverse die. It's hard to say, but I don't think you need to look that hard or strain your eyes to figure out whether or not you've got that. I mean, I can see lots of things on the surface of this coin that probably are just damage. These are so common, I think you can find one in much better shape. And when you see it, you'll know for sure that it's there. So no need to strain looking at something like this and trying to figure out, is that it or not? You're likely to find a better one for your collection. Just towards the end of what would be roll number 12, and I picked up a pretty nice looking 1979. When I put it under the scope, we have a variety. This is the double 979. What we've got here, it's die deterioration doubling across the 9, across the 7, and across this other 9. There is a pretty considerable doubling that you can find. It's die deterioration. It's not a double die. Sometimes it's just the last digit or the last 2, or in this case 3, or sometimes all 4. But this one's actually in pretty nice condition. So that is a cool one to hang on to. I don't know that it's got a lot of value, but there's a double 78, double 79. You can find double 68, 69, double 70. A lot of it just overworked dies, but that's a pretty nice looking one in hand. So that's a cool one to find. And right behind that really nice looking coin is our oldest Canadian in the hunt so far. It is a 1940. It's another King George VI. Very cool find in a bag of pennies from the bank, 1940. Still making our way through this, we've got another laureate portrait. This one is going to be fuzzy. A 1956. It's our second laureate portrait from the 50s, and I think it's our second 1956. No, I completely lied. The last one was that 55 that we were scoping to see if it was the no shoulder fold. This is roll number 15. It's the first actual roll from this bundle. It's probably a different customer altogether, one who was actually able to get rollers for pennies instead of just putting them in a baggie. And so the makeup of these could be completely different. It looks like we might have more copper, and I see some that are in pretty rough condition, so they might have been stored pretty poorly, but we'll see. Well, here's a little surprise. The very second last coin in that roll is actually not going to be a penny. It's going to be a dime, a US dime from 1980. Just the look of it at first, I thought this might be old silver. And I found an old silver dime in a penny roll before, but it's just going to be a plain old dime from 1980. But we're up 9 cents. That's pretty awesome. It would have been even more awesome if it had been silver. Roll 16, another laureate portrait, and it's another 1963. Second last coin of the roll is going to be another oldie. It's another George. What do we got this time? Let's see. 1941. So we got a 40 and a 41. Could we get one in the 30s? That'd be incredible. Roll 17. This is interesting. It is a green cent. You've heard of the red cent. Well, this is a green cent. It doesn't look like corrosion. This penny has been painted. It is a 1979 Denver, and somebody's painted it green. So that's an interesting miscellaneous find. Same roll. Here's another green cent. This time I'm pretty sure this is corrosion. This is not paint. This penny has seen better days. It looks like it's got zinc rot. Roll number 19. We've got another Canadian penny from the 50s. This time it's King George VI. It is a 1950, and there is our good buddy George. Lots of detail in the hair, some marks on it, but a 1950, a 74-year-old penny. Well, we're going to get a find in our last roll. Roll number 20 is going to give us another laureate portrait. This one's a 1961, and I think this is the first 61 that we found today. All right, that's the equivalent of 20 rolls hunted. It weighed a little bit more in favor of zinc and steel than it did on copper, but I'll clean everything up here and we'll take a look at what exactly we found. So that was another fun penny hunt. We hunted the equivalent of 20 rolls of pennies, some of them in baggies. That's just the way it goes. It's really hard to get some of those wrappers to roll up your pennies. But we got a fair amount of copper here, including some US copper. In our miscellaneous finds, we got that painted US penny, and of course that 10 cents from 1980. We did find another sort of a variety, that 1979 double 979 with lots of mint luster on it, so that's pretty cool. We ended up getting 9 laureate portrait coins from the 60s. There's a 61, a couple 62s, a few 63s, and a few 64s. We didn't get a 1960, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. We did get a couple from the 50s, a 55 and a 56. And we even got some King George and some early stuff too. 40, 41, 43, a 47 Maple Leaf, and a 1950. But I think the find of the hunt was our oldest find, a 114-year-old US penny from 1910, a wheat cent. And that is an awesome find, especially here in Canada, where we expect to find some US cents, but not necessarily some really old ones like that. So that was a great one. I hope you really enjoyed that hunt. We were trying to see if we could fill some spots in our beautiful Lighthouse Vista Nature Penny album. In our last hunt, we got a ton of King George V, our first ones, and we got a bunch of them. I think we got 9 different years, which was crazy. But we're not going to fill any spots today. We still have 87 of 131 spots in here. Still have a number of spots that we can fill, some harder to find varieties, and a few that I just haven't put in here. I haven't found a 1990 that was worth keeping just yet. We got to keep our eyes open for that. Some NIFCs, and some harder to find was that 2005P, 2006P. Those are lower mint for sure. And a few varieties that I've got listed here at the back. So we're going to keep on keeping on. Anytime we can get pennies from the bank gives us another opportunity to see if we can fill some spots in there. Again, I hope you enjoyed this penny hunt and album fill video. If you did, please give the video a like. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, Cadroll Hunter, please hit that button and subscribe. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.